No one played with the billionaire's one-legged son until a poor black girl came along. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. It was a cold winter morning, the kind where the air bites at your skin and the world feels as if it's wrapped in a heavy, gray blanket. The sun barely broke through the overcast sky as children in expensive coats played in the private school's playground. But over in the corner, sitting on a bench with his crutches at his side, was Eli. At just 10 years old, he had everything a child could want: wealth, a mansion, and a future already mapped out for him. Yet, none of that could fill the hollow in his chest, the hollow created by the simple truth that no one ever came to play with him. Eli's right leg had been lost in an accident when he was just 3. Now, with a prosthetic and crutches, he was the subject of whispers and stares from the other children. His peers played on the swings, laughing and shouting, but not once did anyone approach him. He was always the one left behind. In that moment, a soft voice cut through the air. "Why are you sitting all alone?" Eli looked up, startled, his heart racing. There, standing in front of him, was a girl no older than him. She had deep brown skin, her hair in neat braids, and her clothes were tattered, a stark contrast to the shiny coats and shoes of the other children. She was looking at him with wide, curious eyes, her small hands clasped in front of her. "What?" Eli asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The girl smiled, though it was shy, unsure. "I'm Anna," she said simply. "Why are you sitting here by yourself?" Eli hesitated, unsure how to respond. He had never talked to anyone who didn't already know who he was, someone who didn't see him as the lonely kid with the crutches. "I'm just not good at playing," he muttered. Anna's eyes brightened. "I'm not good at it either," she said, her voice full of honesty. "But I'd like to try. Will you show me?" Eli's heart skipped a beat. No one had ever asked to play with him before, let alone a girl who seemed so different from the others. It felt like a strange offer, but something about her words made him feel like he could actually belong somewhere, even for just a moment. "Okay," Eli finally said, standing up, his crutches shifting under him. Together, they walked to the empty corner of the playground where the swings creaked in the wind. As Anna tried to push him on the swing, Eli laughed, the sound of it surprising him. It was a laugh he hadn't heard in years. And for the first time, the cold winter morning felt a little warmer. In the distance, other children watched, but Eli didn't care. For once, he wasn't alone. And maybe, just maybe, things were about to change. The next few days felt like a dream for Eli. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't alone. Anna would come to visit him during recess, sitting beside him on the bench or pushing him on the swings. The other kids noticed, some curious, some uncomfortable, but Eli didn't care. He wasn't used to attention, but Anna's presence made everything feel different. It was simple, easy. She wasn't bothered by his crutches or his prosthetic leg. She didn't see his disability. She just saw him, a kid who needed a friend, and in return, she gave him a sense of belonging he hadn't felt in years. It was strange how quickly everything changed. For the first time, Eli wasn't just the quiet boy with a disability. He was just Eli. But as the days went on, something began to shift. Eli's father, Marcus Hart, began to notice the connection between his son and the girl who seemed to come out of nowhere. He had his suspicions, of course. The kind of people who worked for him always kept him updated on the goings-on at his son's school. His assistant had brought it up casually at first. "Sir, I've noticed the boy has a new friend," she said, in the way people do when they try to be subtle about something they know might bother you. "She's different, but she's been very kind to him." Marcus raised an eyebrow, already feeling the sense of discomfort creeping up his spine. "Different?" he asked. "In what way?" The assistant hesitated before continuing. "She's not from a wealthy family, sir. She's poor. Her clothes are worn, and she doesn't quite fit in with the other children." Marcus sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. He was used to people making assumptions. He had grown accustomed to the whispers, the judgments that came with being in his position. But this felt different. His son, who had always been isolated, who had never had a friend in the world, was suddenly interacting with someone from outside their world. It made Marcus uneasy. The idea of Eli mixing with someone like Anna, who had no wealth, no status, and no connections, was unsettling. Marcus had always prided himself on giving his son the best life possible, the best education, the best opportunities. The idea of a child from a different background coming in and changing everything was disruptive. Yet, when Marcus observed Eli, he couldn't help but notice how much happier his son seemed. Eli had a light in his eyes that hadn't been there before. He wasn't withdrawing into himself anymore. He was smiling, laughing, and playing. And it was because of Anna. Over the next few days, Marcus watched them more closely, seeing how their friendship was growing. But there was something else, too. Anna's presence seemed to be making a difference not just in Eli's life, but in Marcus's too. He began to wonder if this girl, this poor black girl, was somehow exactly what his son needed. Yet, as he watched them, a part of him felt conflicted. Anna's background was troubling. She didn't come from a family like theirs. She wasn't from the same world as his son, and Marcus wasn't sure how to navigate that. One evening, as Marcus was on his way home from a business meeting, his assistant called him. "Sir, Anna is waiting for Eli outside the gates again. She said she wanted to see him. Should I tell her to leave?" Marcus stopped in his tracks, his heart racing. "No," he said, before he could think twice. "Let her in. I'll meet her." The decision surprised him, even as he spoke it. He wasn't sure what he was doing, why he was making this choice, but something inside him told him it was the right thing to do. When Anna arrived at the gates of the mansion, she seemed nervous, unsure of herself. Her eyes were wide as she looked around, and for a moment, she hesitated before stepping onto the property. Marcus was standing there, waiting for her. She looked up at him, and for a brief second, their eyes locked. She seemed small against the grandeur of the estate, a little out of place, but Marcus didn't mind. He could see the kindness in her eyes, the same kindness that had drawn Eli to her. "Hi, Mr. Hart," Anna said shyly, her voice soft and unsure. "I just wanted to make sure Eli was okay." Marcus nodded, his expression softening. "He's fine. He's upstairs, playing. You can come inside and wait for him." Anna smiled, her eyes lighting up. She stepped inside, and for the first time, Marcus felt the weight of the situation settle around him. This was no longer just about his son and his friend. This was about something bigger. The walls he had built around his family, around Eli's world, were beginning to crack. Over the next few weeks, Marcus found himself spending more time around Anna. She wasn't like the other people in his life. She didn't want anything from him. She didn't care about his wealth or his power. She only cared about Eli, and in turn, that made Marcus care about her too. It was a strange feeling. He had spent so many years building his empire, protecting his family, and keeping everyone at arm's length. But Anna was different. She had this way of breaking through the walls he had so carefully constructed around himself. And little by little, Marcus began to realize that Anna was the one who was healing his son, and maybe, just maybe, she was healing him too. The days that followed felt like a whirlwind to Eli. What had started as a simple friendship with Anna, the girl from the other side of town, began to shift everything in his life. He had always lived in the world of privilege, surrounded by wealth, luxury, and expectations. But Anna didn't see any of that. She saw a lonely boy who longed for connection. Eli found himself eagerly awaiting every moment he could spend with her. When the bell rang at school, signaling the end of a class, he would look around the playground to see if she was there. She always was. They would sit together on the swing set or walk around the track, sharing small talk, laughter, and quiet moments. For the first time, Eli felt truly alive. He had a friend. But as much as Eli wanted to enjoy this, something was bothering him deep inside. His father, Marcus, had begun to watch him more closely. He had noticed the changes in Eli. At first, it was subtle, just the way Eli would smile more or talk about Anna like she was the most important person in his life. Marcus didn't understand it. He had always provided Eli with everything he thought his son needed. The best tutors, the finest clothes, the most exclusive schools. But all of that seemed irrelevant to Eli now. And then there was the question of Anna. Marcus had invited her into their home a few times, and while he tried to be polite, there was something about her that unsettled him. She didn't belong in his world. The luxury, the elegance, the sophistication, it was all so different from her. She was out of place, or so he thought. One evening, after a particularly long day at the office, Marcus came home to find Eli and Anna sitting in the living room, laughing about something. Anna was sitting cross-legged on the rug, and Eli was lying back on the couch, his prosthetic leg resting beside him. Their laughter filled the room, and for a moment, Marcus couldn't help but smile. There was something so pure about their connection. It was the kind of connection Marcus had never experienced, not since his own childhood, at least. But the smile quickly faded when he saw the way Anna was looking at Eli. She had a look in her eyes that Marcus couldn't quite place, something that made him uncomfortable. She was so kind, so selfless, and it made him wonder if she was taking advantage of Eli's kindness. He couldn't shake the thought. "Eli," Marcus said, his voice a little colder than he intended. "Can I speak with you for a moment?" Eli looked up, surprised by his father's tone. "Sure, Dad," he replied. Anna stood up to leave, sensing the tension in the air. "I'll go," she said softly. "I'll wait outside." "No, stay," Eli protested. "We're just talking." But Anna hesitated, sensing that the conversation was about to shift. "It's fine," she said with a small smile. "I'll be outside if you need me." Marcus watched as she left the room, closing the door behind her. He then turned his attention back to Eli. "I need to ask you something," Marcus began, his voice steady but firm. "Is she really your friend?" Eli felt his stomach drop. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Marcus continued, his tone growing more serious. "What does she want from you?" Eli frowned, his eyebrows furrowing in confusion. "She doesn't want anything from me," he said, his voice defensive. "She's just my friend." "Are you sure?" Marcus pressed. "I've seen the way she looks at you. I'm just concerned that she's taking advantage of your generosity." Eli shook his head, his heart pounding. "No, Dad. You don't get it. She's the first person who's ever treated me like I'm normal. Not like I'm some project or some charity case. She actually likes me for me." Marcus felt a pang of guilt at his son's words. He knew Eli wasn't trying to be difficult, but he was so used to controlling every aspect of his son's life that the idea of Eli forming a connection with someone outside his sphere of influence made him feel uneasy. "I just don't want you to get hurt, Eli," Marcus said, his voice softening. "You deserve better than this." Eli stood up, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "You don't get it, Dad," he said, his voice shaking with frustration. "I don't want better. I just want to be seen. And Anna sees me." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and unresolved. Marcus opened his mouth to say something, but then he stopped himself. He knew there was no use arguing with his son. Eli had made up his mind. And in that moment, Marcus realized something that unsettled him even more. He didn't want to be the one who stood in the way of his son's happiness. Slowly, Marcus sat down on the couch, his thoughts racing. He had always tried to protect Eli, but perhaps in doing so, he had kept him isolated. And now, for the first time, Eli was choosing someone else. Marcus watched his son, wondering if he was making the right decision. Maybe he had been too protective, too controlling. Maybe, just maybe, Anna was the one thing Eli needed to find his way in the world. Later that evening, Marcus went outside to find Anna sitting on the porch, her head tilted back as she gazed up at the stars. She looked up when she heard his footsteps, her expression cautious. "You're still here?" Marcus asked, his voice gentler now. "I was just waiting for Eli," Anna replied. "He's a good kid. He deserves to be happy." Marcus nodded, taking a seat beside her. "You're right," he said quietly. "He does. And I want him to be happy." Anna didn't say anything for a moment. Then she turned to him, her eyes wide. "I'm not trying to take anything from him," she said softly. I just want to be there for him, like he's been there for me." The sincerity in her voice struck Marcus deeply. He nodded slowly, realizing that, maybe, just maybe, he had been wrong about her. She wasn't a threat to his son. She was the one person who truly cared. For the first time, Marcus felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this girl, Anna, was exactly what Eli needed. And maybe, just maybe, she was exactly what their family needed too. The next few weeks felt like a blur to Eli. Things with Anna had been going so well that he started to believe that everything might finally be okay. His crutches no longer felt like barriers to friendships. Anna had a way of making him feel like they were just tools to help him live his life, not limitations. The laughter they shared during lunch, the simple moments of watching the clouds drift by during recess, those were the things Eli cherished most. But something was changing in the house. Marcus, though still polite to Anna, began to pull back, his actions more distant. He would leave the room when she entered or avoid talking to her altogether. It was subtle, but it didn't go unnoticed. Eli felt the shift. One evening, when Eli and Anna were sitting in the family room, watching a movie together, Marcus walked in, his face unreadable. He glanced at Anna, then turned to Eli. "Can we talk, son?" he asked, his voice sounding more tired than usual. Anna looked between them, sensing the tension, but she stood up quickly, nodding. "I'll go for a walk," she said, offering Eli a small smile before stepping out of the room. Eli couldn't help but feel a pang of discomfort as she left. He didn't want her to go, but he knew it was better that way. It was clear his dad had something important to say. "What's going on with you and Anna?" Marcus asked as soon as the door closed. "Nothing, Dad. She's just my friend." Eli's voice was steady, though his heart pounded. He knew where this was going. "I don't want you to get hurt, Eli," Marcus said, his voice softer now, but still firm. "She's not from your world. She's not like the other kids you're used to. People like her don't belong here." Eli felt a wave of anger rush through him. "What do you mean, people like her?" he asked, his voice rising. Marcus didn't respond right away. He seemed to be choosing his words carefully, like he was trying to soften what he had to say. "She's different, son. Her family doesn't have the kind of resources we do. She doesn't fit in with our lifestyle." Eli's chest tightened, and his fists clenched. "You don't get it, Dad," he said, his voice quieter now, but full of emotion. "Anna's the first person who's ever treated me like I'm not just a kid with a disability. She doesn't care about any of that. She sees me for who I am, not for what I can't do." Marcus looked at him, his face softening. "I just don't want you to get hurt, Eli," he repeated, his voice almost pleading now. "I've seen this before. People come and go, and they only want something from you." Eli stood up, feeling his frustration bubble over. "I don't care about her wanting anything from me. I care about her being a friend, Dad. That's all." He paused, his throat tight. "I've spent my whole life feeling like I don't belong, like I'm not enough. And now, for the first time, I feel like I have someone who sees me. Who really sees me." Marcus stood there, looking at his son, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Eli's words weren't just a plea to be understood. They were a cry for connection, for validation. It wasn't about Anna or her background. It was about Eli finally feeling like he mattered. "I don't want to lose you, Eli," Marcus said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. Eli looked at him, his anger fading just enough for him to see the fear in his father's eyes. "You won't lose me," Eli replied, his voice steady. "But if you keep pushing Anna away, you're going to lose me in a different way." Marcus's face softened, and he nodded, looking away for a moment as if he was trying to process everything. "I'm just trying to protect you," he said, almost to himself. Eli stepped closer to his father. "I know, Dad. But sometimes, the best thing you can do is let me make my own choices. Let me decide who my friends are." Marcus didn't respond at first. He just looked at Eli, and for the first time in a long time, Eli saw a shift in his father. It wasn't a full change, not yet, but it was enough. He could see Marcus was trying. He wasn't ready to fully accept Anna into their world, but there was a glimmer of understanding in his eyes. The next day, when Anna arrived at the house for their usual hangout, Marcus surprised both of them. He was standing in the hallway, waiting for her as she walked in. "Anna," he said, his voice more open than usual. "I've been thinking. You're welcome here. As Eli's friend." Anna looked up at Marcus, taken aback. "Thank you," she said quietly, a bit shy but sincere. Marcus smiled, just a little, but it was enough. "I don't know if we're ready to make you a part of the family, but I'll start with this. I won't get in the way anymore." Anna's eyes widened, and Eli could see the relief on her face. For a moment, everything felt like it could be okay. Eli had his friend, and maybe, just maybe, his father was starting to understand what that meant. That evening, as Eli and Anna sat together on the porch, watching the sun set, Eli felt a weight lift off his shoulders. It wasn't perfect yet. There would be challenges ahead. But for the first time in a long time, he felt like his life was heading in the right direction. And that direction was one where Anna, the girl who had shown him what real friendship looked like, was a part of it. The days passed in a peaceful haze, with Eli and Anna growing closer as each one seemed to heal the other in ways neither of them fully understood. The tension between Marcus and Anna had slowly started to dissolve. The awkwardness was still there, but it was different now. Marcus had made the effort to be more open, and Anna was beginning to understand that, while he might never fully accept her into his world, He was no longer actively rejecting her. It was a small victory, but to Eli, it meant the world. They had more time together now. Time to talk, laugh, and just be kids. Anna spent more afternoons with Eli at his house, while Marcus watched from a distance, still unsure, but allowing the connection to happen. The change in their relationship didn't happen overnight, and there were still moments when Marcus would withdraw, his eyes clouded with uncertainty. But little by little, the walls around their lives seemed to be coming down. However, it wasn't all smooth sailing. One rainy afternoon, as Eli and Anna played video games in the living room, they heard a loud knock at the door. It was more forceful than usual, and Marcus, who had been sitting by the fireplace with his laptop, immediately got up. He opened the door to find two men standing in front of him. One was in a suit, the other was dressed in a more casual, but still professional, outfit. "Mr. Hart," the man in the suit asked, his tone formal, but carrying an edge of something Eli couldn't quite place. "We need to speak with you about something important. It's about your son." Marcus stiffened, his eyes narrowing slightly. "My son? What is this about?" The men exchanged a brief look before the one in the suit spoke again. "There's been some concern about the friendship he's been forming with a certain girl. We need to discuss it further." Eli's heart sank as he exchanged a quick glance with Anna, who was sitting on the couch behind him. This was it. The moment he had been dreading. He knew that something like this was bound to happen sooner or later. His father had tried, but there was always the looming fear that the outside world wouldn't accept what was happening. Anna was different, and she would always be different. Marcus stepped back, his face hardening. "This is my home," he said coldly, "and my son. I'll decide who he can be friends with. Is there something you need to tell me?" The man in the suit took a deep breath, then handed Marcus a file. "We've done our due diligence," he said. "We've looked into the girl's background. She's not a suitable influence for your son. She comes from a very troubled family, and there are concerns about her. Enough." Marcus snapped, cutting him off. He slammed the door shut, leaving the two men standing on the doorstep. The silence in the room was deafening. Eli could feel the anger radiating off his father as he stood there, holding the file in his hand. "What did they say, Dad?" Eli asked quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Marcus didn't answer at first. He looked at Eli, his face a mix of frustration and concern. "They don't think she's good for you, Eli," Marcus said finally, his voice tight. "She's a bad influence." Eli's heart raced. He had known this would happen, but it still hurt. "That's not true," he protested, his voice shaking with emotion. "She's not a bad influence. She's my friend. She's been the only person who has cared about me." Marcus let out a long sigh, his shoulders sagging. "I'm just trying to protect you, son. You don't understand what it's like out there. People like her, they have nothing to lose. They'll use you." Eli shook his head. "No, you're wrong," he said, his voice rising now. "She's not like that. She's better than anyone you know." Marcus didn't respond. He just looked at Eli, his expression unreadable. Eli's fists clenched, and he turned away, his chest tight with the pain of it all. "I can't do this anymore, Dad," he said quietly, his voice breaking. "I can't keep living like this. I don't want to live in a world where I can't be friends with Anna." Marcus looked at him, his face softening just a little. "Eli," he said gently, "I'm just trying to protect you. I don't want to see you hurt." Eli didn't answer. He couldn't. The pain in his chest was too much. He wanted to run away, to escape from the world that had always tried to control him. He just wanted to be free. But Anna's voice broke through his thoughts. "Eli," she called softly. He turned to see her standing at the door, her eyes wide with concern. "Are you okay?" she asked. Eli forced a smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I'm fine." Anna stepped into the room, walking over to where Eli stood. "You don't have to do this alone," she said softly. "I'm here. You can talk to me." Eli nodded, his throat tight. For the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to lean into the comfort of her presence. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. He wasn't alone. Not anymore. Anna took his hand gently. "Whatever happens, we'll get through it together," she said, her voice steady and reassuring. Eli squeezed her hand, feeling a flicker of hope for the first time in what felt like forever. This was his choice. And no matter what, he wasn't going to let anyone take her away from him. He wasn't going to let anyone tell him who he could or couldn't be friends with. Anna was his friend, and that was enough. The next few days felt like an emotional roller coaster for Eli and Anna. While Marcus had allowed Anna to stay in their home, the tension still lingered. Marcus's acceptance was only surface deep. He still wasn't comfortable with Eli's growing closeness to her. It was clear that his attempt to protect his son from what he saw as dangers of Anna's background had not fully faded. But Eli was determined, and he could feel himself slowly growing apart from the protective walls his father had built around him. It was in moments like these, when Eli and Anna spent time together, that he felt truly alive. One afternoon, after school, Anna and Eli sat together on the porch, watching the sun begin to dip below the horizon. Eli couldn't shake the feeling that things were shifting. He had become more distant from his father, more disconnected from the life he once knew. But, in a way, it felt right. He had found something real. Anna turned to him, her face gentle. "You seem far away today," she said quietly. Eli sighed, looking up at the sky. "I guess I am. It's just, everything's changing so fast. I don't think my dad really gets it." Anna nodded, her expression understanding. "People don't always see what's right in front of them," she said softly. "But that doesn't mean it's not real." Eli gave her a small smile, feeling comforted by her words. It wasn't the first time she had said something that made him feel understood. She had a way of making everything feel simpler, clearer. As the weeks passed, Eli found himself in more and more situations where his father's expectations collided with his growing independence. Marcus wanted him to follow the path he had set for him, but Eli didn't want to follow that path anymore. He didn't want to keep hiding who he was or who he wanted to be. One evening, after dinner, Marcus sat Eli down in the study. "We need to talk," he said, his tone serious. Eli felt a knot form in his stomach. "About what?" he asked, trying to hide the anxiety that crept into his voice. "About this whole situation with Anna," Marcus said, his voice tight. "I don't want you getting involved in something that could cause trouble for you. You know better than this, Eli." Eli's heart sank, and his fists clenched at his sides. "You don't get it, Dad," he said, his voice rising. "Anna's not a problem. She's the only person who's ever treated me like I'm just me, not a charity case, not someone to pity. She's my friend. And if you don't accept that, then I don't know what to say anymore." Marcus looked at him, a flicker of frustration in his eyes. "I'm trying to protect you, son. The world isn't as simple as you think. People like her don't care about you the way we do. You don't know what she's really after." Eli's voice cracked with emotion. "You think she's after something from me? You think she's using me? I don't care about what she has or doesn't have. I care about her, Dad. She cares about me." The silence between them was heavy. Marcus stared at his son, struggling to understand. "You don't understand," Eli continued, his voice softening. "You've always protected me, but I don't need protecting anymore. I just need to live my life. I just need a chance to figure things out for myself." Marcus's expression faltered. "I'm not saying you don't deserve to have friends, Eli," he said quietly. "I'm saying that I don't trust this situation. I don't trust her, and I don't want you to get hurt." Eli took a deep breath, trying to hold back the frustration that burned inside him. "I'm not a kid anymore, Dad. I know what I'm doing. You can't keep controlling everything in my life. I'm my own person now." Marcus's eyes softened, but the tension remained. "I just want what's best for you, son. You know that." Eli nodded, but the distance between them felt wider than ever. "I know, Dad. But maybe what's best for me is different from what you think." The conversation left Eli feeling drained. He wasn't sure where it would lead, but he couldn't ignore the growing feeling that he was breaking away from everything he'd known. He was starting to realize that the path his father wanted for him wasn't his own path. It wasn't enough for him anymore. That evening, after the conversation with his father, Eli went to find Anna. He needed to talk to her, to tell her how things were shifting, how he felt like he was losing himself in the process. When he found her sitting on the front steps, her head tilted back as she watched the stars, he sat beside her without a word. She turned to him, her expression gentle. "Hey, what's on your mind?" she asked. Eli took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "Everything's changing," he said quietly. "I'm not sure how to handle it." Anna smiled softly. "You don't have to handle it alone," she said. "I'm here. We'll figure it out together." Eli looked at her, feeling the weight of the moment. He didn't have all the answers. But in that moment, he knew that, no matter what happened, he wasn't alone. And that was enough to give him the strength to face whatever was coming next. The following weeks were a blur for Eli. His life had changed so drastically that he barely recognized the world around him anymore. He found himself stuck between the person his father wanted him to be and the person he was becoming with Anna's friendship. Every moment they spent together felt like a revelation, but the tension between him and Marcus was only growing. His father, though still trying to support him, was constantly pulling him back, pushing him to stay within the walls of their world, the world of money, power, and expectation. Eli wasn't sure how much longer he could stay in that world. It felt suffocating. One afternoon, as Eli sat on the porch with Anna, his thoughts began to race. The weight of the growing distance between him and Marcus was becoming unbearable. He had always been his father's son, obedient, respectful, but now, for the first time in his life, he was questioning everything. Anna noticed the look on his face and gently placed her hand on his. "What's going on, Eli?" she asked softly, her voice steady, as always. He turned to look at her, his eyes reflecting the uncertainty he was feeling inside. "I don't know anymore," he said, his voice low. "Everything feels wrong. I don't know who I'm supposed to be. My dad wants me to be someone I'm not, and I can't keep pretending to be that person." Anna's gaze softened, and she leaned in, her expression filled with understanding. "You don't have to pretend for anyone, Eli," she said. "You don't have to be anyone other than who you are." Eli swallowed hard. He wanted to believe her, but it was hard when the pressure from his father felt so heavy. "What if I can't make it on my own?" he asked quietly. "What if I don't fit into this world anymore? I don't even know what I'm supposed to do anymore." Anna gave him a reassuring smile. "You don't have to have it all figured out right now, but you don't have to do it alone either. I'm here, Eli. We'll figure it out together." Eli felt the warmth in her words, and for the first time in a long time, he felt like maybe things could be okay. But the next day, things took an unexpected turn. Eli arrived at school to find a group of students gathered around, whispering and pointing at him. At first, he didn't understand why, but when he walked closer, he saw it. A rumor had spread like wildfire. People were talking about Anna. They were saying things that weren't true, things that weren't even close to the reality of who she was. "Did you hear?" one of the kids whispered. "She's from a bad family. I heard she's been in trouble before." "Yeah, she's just using Eli to get ahead," another kid added. Eli's heart sank as he stood there, listening to the cruel words being thrown around. He felt his stomach tighten with anger. "That's not true," he yelled, his voice cutting through the whispers. "Anna's not like that. She's my friend, and I won't let you talk about her like that." The group fell silent, staring at him. Eli could feel the weight of their judgment, but he stood his ground. He wasn't going to let anyone speak about Anna that way, not now and not ever. Later that afternoon, Anna found him in the hallway. She had heard the rumors too. Her face was pale, and her eyes were filled with a sadness that broke Eli's heart. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't mean for this to happen." Eli took her hand, squeezing it tightly. "Don't apologize," he said fiercely. "This is not your fault. They don't get it. They don't understand what we have." Anna looked at him, her expression full of doubt. "But what if they're right? What if I really am just using you? What if I don't belong here?" Eli shook his head, his heart aching for her. "You belong here. You belong with me, and I'll make sure they know that." The next few days were harder than Eli expected. The whispers didn't stop. The rumors only grew, and it felt like the entire school was turning against Anna. But what hurt the most was watching his father's reaction. Marcus had heard about the rumors, and although he never said anything directly to Eli, the disappointment in his eyes was enough. The silence between them grew even thicker. Marcus started making comments about how Eli should focus on his future, how he needed to be careful about who he associated with. It was clear that Anna wasn't part of the future Marcus envisioned for his son. One evening, after a tense dinner, Eli found himself standing in front of his father's office. He wasn't sure what he was doing there, but something inside him told him that it was time to have a real conversation. He knocked on the door before entering. Marcus looked up from his desk, surprised. "Eli, what's wrong?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. Eli took a deep breath. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice shaking with emotion. "About Anna." Marcus's expression hardened. "Eli, I've already told you." "No," Eli interrupted, his voice steady now. "You listen to me. Anna is my friend. She's not using me. She's not here to take anything from me. She's here because we care about each other. And I'm not going to let you or anyone else make me feel like I'm doing something wrong." There was a long silence between them. Eli could feel his father's eyes on him, searching for something. Finally, Marcus spoke. I'm not trying to control you, Eli. I just want you to be careful. The world can be cruel. And sometimes, people don't have the best intentions. Eli's heart was pounding, but he didn't back down. I know, Dad. But this is my life. I'm not going to let you decide who I can or can't be friends with. Anna is a good person, and I'm not going to lose her just because you don't understand. Marcus looked at him for a long time before finally sighing. I don't know if I can ever fully understand this, Eli, but I'll try. The words weren't much, but they were a start. Eli felt a wave of relief wash over him. Maybe, just maybe, things could start to change. Maybe there was hope after all. The days following the conversation with his father were tense, filled with long silences that stretched between Eli and Marcus. Though Marcus had promised to try to understand, Eli couldn't shake the feeling that the distance between them had grown wider, even if his father hadn't said as much. Eli still felt the weight of his father's disapproval hanging in the air. It was as if Marcus was holding back, watching Eli and Anna from the sidelines, unsure of where this friendship would lead. Anna noticed the shift too. One afternoon, when she came to the house to visit, she could feel the tension as soon as she walked in. Eli wasn't as cheerful as usual, and his eyes kept darting toward his father's office, as if expecting something to happen. She sat down beside him on the couch, her voice gentle. Eli, what's going on? You've been quiet lately. Eli exhaled slowly, the heaviness in his chest pushing him to speak. It's my dad, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. He's trying. He really is. But I don't know if he gets it. He doesn't get what you mean to me. Anna's heart ached for him. She could see the struggle in his eyes, the weight of expectations pressing down on him. Eli, you don't have to explain it to me, she said softly, placing her hand on his. I get it. I really do. I know things are hard right now, but I'm not going anywhere. You have me. Eli looked at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. She was the only constant in his life right now, the only person who made him feel like he wasn't invisible. I don't want to lose you, Anna, he said quietly, his voice trembling. I feel like I'm losing everything else. Anna smiled, her eyes full of warmth. You're not losing anything, Eli. Not me. Not anyone who truly matters. Eli squeezed her hand, finding some comfort in her words. They sat in silence for a few moments, the weight of the situation sinking in. Outside, the world seemed calm, but inside, Eli felt a storm brewing. He knew he had to make a choice. He couldn't keep living in the space between the two worlds, his father's and his own. And Anna, the girl who had been the most consistent thing in his life, deserved better than to be stuck in the middle. Later that evening, as the house quieted down, Eli knew he had to take the next step. He walked to Marcus's office, his heart pounding in his chest. This time, he wasn't going to hold back. He wasn't going to let his father dictate who he could be friends with anymore. He knocked softly before entering. Marcus looked up from his desk, surprised to see Eli standing there, his posture firm. Eli, what's on your mind? He asked, his voice neutral but not unkind. Eli stood tall, his voice steady. Dad, I need you to listen to me, he began. I've thought about this a lot, and I've made my decision. Anna is my friend. She's not going anywhere, and I need you to understand that she's important to me. I don't care about what anyone else says. I don't care about her background or what other people think. She's my choice, and I won't apologize for it. Marcus stared at his son, his brow furrowed, as if trying to find the right words. For a moment, neither of them spoke, the silence filling the room like an unspoken truth. Finally, Marcus spoke, his voice softer now. I don't want you to get hurt, Eli, he said, his tone heavy with concern. I've seen what happens when people don't have your best interests at heart. It's not just about her, son. It's about you. I just want you to be careful. Eli's chest tightened. He had heard these words too many times before. But now, he was the one who had to be strong. I know you're trying to protect me, Eli said, his voice firm. But I'm not a kid anymore, Dad. I can make my own decisions. I can handle it. Marcus looked at him for a long moment, his eyes searching Eli's face. Finally, he sighed, his shoulders sagging slightly. I just want you to be happy, Eli, he said quietly. If this friendship with Anna makes you happy, I'll try to accept it. I won't stand in your way. Eli felt a rush of relief, but it was bittersweet. His father wasn't fully on board, but he was trying. And that was more than he had expected. Thanks, Dad, Eli said, his voice filled with gratitude. That means more than you know. Marcus nodded, but there was still a distant look in his eyes. I'm still not sure about this, but I'll respect your decision. Eli left the office, feeling a sense of accomplishment. He had stood his ground, and for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was finally in control of his life. The next day, as he sat outside with Anna, he couldn't help but feel that things were starting to shift. For the first time, it felt like there was hope. He wasn't living in the shadow of his father's expectations anymore. He was living for himself. I talked to my dad, Eli said, his voice steady. He's not happy about it, but he's trying. He's going to let me have this. Anna smiled, her eyes lighting up. I'm so proud of you, Eli, she said, her voice filled with warmth. You don't have to explain anything to anyone. You've done what's right for you, and that's all that matters. Eli smiled back, his heart lighter than it had been in weeks. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was heading in the right direction. He had made his choice, and Anna, the girl who had helped him find his way, was right there beside him. Together, they could face whatever came next. The days following their conversation felt oddly peaceful. For the first time in weeks, Eli wasn't waking up with the pressure of having to pretend to be someone he wasn't. His father, Marcus, had reluctantly accepted that Eli had made his choice. While Marcus hadn't fully embraced the friendship with Anna, he had agreed to stop standing in the way. That was enough for Eli for now. He didn't need his father to approve of everything, just that one small act of trust. And for the first time, Eli felt like he could breathe. Anna, too, seemed lighter, more confident. It was as if a weight had been lifted off her shoulders as well. They spent more time together than ever before, finding solace in each other's company. They would stay up late, talking about everything and nothing, their conversations full of laughter, and sometimes, long silences where words weren't needed. But even in this calm, there was a quiet undercurrent of tension. Eli knew that while his father had agreed to back off, there were still people out there who didn't approve of his relationship with Anna. And those people were getting louder. One afternoon, when Eli and Anna were hanging out in the backyard, they heard a car pull up to the house. Eli glanced up to see a black sedan parked in the driveway, the engine still running. It wasn't unusual for Marcus to have business associates or staff stopping by, but something about this visit felt different. He saw his father step out of the car, followed by a well-dressed man Eli had never seen before. The man's sharp suit and cold demeanor immediately set Eli on edge. Marcus and the stranger exchanged words in low tones, and though Eli couldn't hear everything, the exchange didn't seem friendly. Anna, sitting beside him, noticed his gaze and followed it. "Who's that?" she asked quietly. Eli shrugged, trying to hide the unease that was rising within him. "I don't know. Maybe someone from work." But deep down, he knew it was more than that. Marcus walked into the house with the stranger, and Eli felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change again. Later that evening, as the dinner table fell silent, Marcus finally spoke. "Eli, we need to talk," he said, his voice stern. "I don't want to hear it," Eli muttered, pushing his food around on his plate. "I know you've been talking to Anna, and I've told you before, I don't want you getting too close to people like her." The words hit Eli like a punch in the gut. He couldn't believe his father was still saying this. He had hoped for change, even if it was small, but now, it felt like all that progress had been undone. "You don't get it, Dad," Eli said, his voice rising. "Anna is my friend. She's a good person. Why can't you see that?" Marcus's expression hardened. "I don't trust her, Eli. I don't know where she's from, and I don't know what she wants from you." Eli pushed back from the table, the anger building inside him. "You always think people are out to get something. But Anna isn't like that. She's not using me. I'm not some project for her to fix. I'm just her friend. I'm not asking you to cut ties with her, but I need you to understand the risks involved," Marcus said, his voice quieter now. "There are people who will use your kindness against you. And Anna, she's not someone you can trust fully." Eli's hands clenched into fists. "I can't believe you're still saying this. You're telling me who I can be friends with, who I can trust, like you know better than I do. You're pushing me away, Dad. I'm trying to live my own life. I don't need your approval. I just need you to trust me." Marcus's face softened for a moment, but it was fleeting. "I do trust you, Eli, but I also know how the world works, and I don't want to see you hurt." Eli stood there, feeling the weight of his father's words press down on him. "I'm not a child anymore, Dad. I can make my own decisions. I'm not asking you to agree with me. but I need you to respect my choices. Marcus looked away, his hands resting on the table. I don't want to lose you, Eli. But this is harder than I thought. Eli's heart clenched as he saw the vulnerability in his father's eyes. He had never seen his father so unsure, so lost. But that didn't change the fact that Eli needed his freedom. He needed to live on his own terms. That night, as he lay in bed, Eli thought about everything that had been said. He knew he couldn't keep living like this, torn between his father's expectations and his own desires. He had made his choice, and it wasn't just about Anna. It was about his life, his identity, his future. It wasn't going to be easy, but Eli knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to let anyone, his father, his peers, or anyone else, tell him who he could or couldn't be. The next day, Eli and Anna met at their usual spot in the park. As they sat together, Eli could tell something had changed. Anna seemed quieter than usual, her eyes distant. What's going on? Eli asked gently. Anna hesitated before speaking, her voice soft. I overheard something today, she said. I heard people talking about me. About us. They said things that weren't true. Things that made me feel like I don't belong here. Like I'm not supposed to be with you. Eli reached out, taking her hand in his. Don't listen to them, he said firmly. You belong with me. You belong here. I don't care what anyone else says. Anna met his gaze, her eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, she whispered. But I think we need to prove it to them. Not just for me, but for us. We need to show them that we're stronger than their words. Eli nodded, his resolve firm. You're right. We're stronger together. And we'll face whatever comes next, side by side. In that moment, Eli realized that no matter how hard things got, he wouldn't back down. He would fight for his friendship with Anna, for the life he wanted, and for the future he knew he deserved. Together, they would take on whatever came their way. The weeks following their decision to face the challenges together were filled with mixed emotions for Eli and Anna. They had made it clear to everyone around them that their friendship was important and that they would not let anyone or anything tear them apart. It wasn't easy. Rumors still swirled through school, whispers that reached their ears at every turn. But they remained unshaken, choosing to ignore the negativity and focus on each other. Still, the pressure didn't stop. As much as Eli tried to ignore the words of others, it felt like the world outside was watching them, judging them for something they didn't even understand. It was during one of those difficult days when everything seemed to be falling apart that things took an unexpected turn. Eli had just finished another long day at school, where the stares and whispers felt heavier than ever. He was starting to believe that no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't escape the weight of his father's expectations or the judgment of his peers. Anna was there, as she always was, waiting for him outside the school gates. When she saw the expression on his face, she immediately rushed over, concern in her eyes. Eli, what happened? You look, I don't know, defeated. Eli ran a hand through his hair, looking at her with a mix of frustration and exhaustion. It's never ending. The whispers, the judgment. It feels like no matter what I do, I can't get away from it. I thought once my dad came around, it would get easier. But it's not. It's only getting worse. Anna placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch steady and reassuring. I know it's hard, she said softly. But we're doing the right thing. We know the truth, Eli. We know what we have. And that's more than enough. Eli looked at her, his eyes full of emotion. I don't know if I can keep fighting, Anna. Every day feels like a battle. Anna squeezed his shoulder. You don't have to fight it alone. You have me. And I'm not going anywhere. Her words were simple, but they cut through the storm in his mind. In that moment, Eli realized something important. He didn't need to prove anything to anyone. The only thing that mattered was what he and Anna had. The connection they shared was real, and no amount of judgment from the outside world could take that away. But things were still changing. That evening, as Eli sat in the living room, trying to focus on his homework, Marcus walked in. There was something different in the air, a sense of finality that Eli could feel even before his father spoke. Eli, Marcus began, his voice serious. I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About Anna. Eli looked up, wary but hopeful. Yeah. I've been wrong, Marcus said quietly, his gaze dropping to the floor. I've spent so much time trying to protect you that I forgot to see what was right in front of me. Anna's not who I thought she was. She's not a threat to you. She's just someone who cares about you, and for that, I'm grateful. Eli's heart raced. He had never heard his father say something like this before. Marcus looked at him, his expression softening. I don't understand at all, but I see now that you're not just a kid anymore. You're making your own choices, and I respect that. I'm sorry for trying to control everything. Eli felt a lump form in his throat, the weight of his father's words settling over him. Thanks, Dad, he said quietly, the words barely leaving his lips. It wasn't a perfect resolution. It wasn't an easy fix, but it was a step forward. For the first time in a long time, Eli felt like he wasn't fighting this battle alone. The next day, Anna and Eli decided to take a walk in the park, the crisp autumn air filling their lungs as they strolled along the path. Eli felt lighter, as if the weight on his shoulders had been lifted, even if just a little. They sat down on a bench, the sun shining through the trees, casting a warm glow over them. Anna turned to Eli, a gentle smile on her face. So what now? She asked, her voice full of curiosity. Eli looked at her, his heart full of gratitude. Now we keep going. We don't let anyone or anything change what we have. Anna smiled, her eyes sparkling. That sounds perfect. As they sat together, surrounded by the quiet beauty of the park, Eli realized that this was his new beginning. No more hiding, no more living in the shadows. He didn't have to explain himself to anyone. He didn't have to live according to anyone else's rules. He could live for himself, and Anna, the one person who truly understood him, would be right there with him. As the leaves fell gently around them, Eli knew that no matter what the future held, he was ready to face it. Together, they would face whatever came next, side by side. As the weeks passed, things slowly began to settle. Eli and Anna, though still facing challenges, had found a rhythm in their friendship that made it feel unbreakable. Marcus, despite his reservations, had started to come around more, and though his acceptance of Anna wasn't fully realized, the tension between father and son had diminished. Eli had no illusions. It wasn't easy, but it felt like the first step in a long journey toward understanding. Anna had become not just his best friend, but his anchor in a world that still felt foreign and uncertain. The bond they shared was growing stronger with each passing day. But it was at that moment of tentative peace that Eli was reminded how fragile it all was. One afternoon, as they sat together in the park, Anna leaned her head on Eli's shoulder, and they watched the sunset in comfortable silence. The world around them was peaceful, but Eli couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something was on the horizon. Eli, have you heard from your dad about the foundation event next week? Anna asked casually, pulling away from him to look at his face. Eli sighed, his gaze drifting to the sky. No, not really. I think it's one of those big family events where everyone has to attend. Anna raised an eyebrow. Does that mean you have to go? Eli hesitated. I guess. It's not like I can skip it. Anna's expression softened, and she gave his hand a reassuring squeeze. You don't have to go, Eli. You're your own person. If you don't want to be there, then you shouldn't feel pressured to attend. Eli shook his head, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. I know. But the thing is, Anna, it's not just a family event. It's where all the important people in my dad's world come together. And I can't exactly avoid it. Anna's face lit up with a thoughtful look. Well, then I'll go with you. Eli looked at her, surprised. You'd go with me? Anna shrugged, her eyes glinting with determination. Of course. You don't have to face those people alone. I know it's going to be tough, but I'll be there to support you. No matter what. Eli felt a wave of relief wash over him. There was something about Anna's unwavering presence that made everything feel more bearable. Thanks, he said, his voice sincere. I'm really lucky to have you by my side. The night before the event, Eli stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie for what seemed like the 100th time. The weight of the occasion loomed large in his mind. He had always felt like an outsider at these events, never truly part of the world his father had built. But this time, with Anna at his side, he wasn't sure if it was going to be different or just another reminder of how far apart they were. When they arrived at the venue the next evening, Eli's heart pounded in his chest. The building was grand, a towering structure that seemed to glimmer under the city lights. Inside, everything was immaculate, the polished floors, the grand chandeliers, the hum of voices in every corner. It was the world his father had worked so hard to create, a world that felt so distant from everything Eli had come to care about. As they stepped inside, Eli's nerves were on edge. He felt out of place, like a small fish in a sea of sharks. His father had introduced him to people before, but it had always felt like a performance, an act he had to put on. Tonight was no different. Marcus, standing tall in his suit, spotted them immediately. His expression shifted from one of business to fatherly concern as he noticed Eli's discomfort. "Eli, good to see you," Marcus said, forcing a smile, though his eyes flickered toward Anna for a moment. Eli gave a small nod. "Dad?" he replied, his voice steady, but his unease was evident. Anna, sensing his tension, gently squeezed his hand before stepping forward. "Hello, Mr. Hart," she greeted him, her voice calm and confident. Marcus, clearly surprised by her directness, gave her a nod. "Anna, right?" he asked, his tone colder than it had been when they first met. "It's good to see you here." Anna smiled warmly, but Eli could tell it didn't reach Marcus's eyes. "Thank you for inviting me," she said, her voice unwavering despite the tension in the air. "I've been looking forward to it." "I'm sure you've met some of our guests already," Marcus said, quickly shifting the conversation away from the awkwardness. "Let's get you something to drink." As they mingled with the other guests, Eli could feel the walls closing in around him. The whispers, the stares, he was used to it all. But this time, it was different. Anna was by his side, her presence a steadying force that kept him grounded. They found themselves in a quiet corner of the room, away from the crowd. "You're doing great," Anna whispered, her hand resting on his shoulder. "You're not alone, Eli. You've got me, and that's what matters." Eli smiled at her, grateful for her words. For the first time in years, he felt like he wasn't pretending. He wasn't just going through the motions, trying to fit in. He was being himself, standing beside the one person who truly understood him. The evening dragged on, the conversation polite but shallow. Eli felt the weight of the world on his shoulders, but as the night wore on, he realized something. This wasn't his world anymore. The world of suits and high society had never truly fit him. But Anna's world, the one they had created together, that was real. And that was all that mattered. As they finally left the event, stepping out into the crisp night air, Eli felt a sense of relief wash over him. "We did it," he said, a small laugh escaping his lips. Anna grinned, her eyes sparkling. "We sure did. And you know what? We're going to keep doing it. No matter what." Eli looked at her, his heart full. "Thanks for being here. I don't think I could have done it without you." Anna smiled, her grip on his hand tightening. "You're never going to have to do it alone, Eli. I'm always going to be here, by your side." Eli nodded, feeling more certain than ever about the future. This wasn't just a step forward, it was the beginning of something new. And no matter what came next, he knew that Anna would always be by his side, ready to face it together. The days after the event felt like a quiet victory for Eli and Anna. The pressure was still there, lingering like a shadow, but the strength they had found in each other was undeniable. Eli could feel the change in himself. For the first time in years, he wasn't living for someone else's expectations. He was living for himself, for the friendship that had blossomed between him and Anna. It wasn't perfect, and there were still people who didn't understand, but he didn't care anymore. He had made his choice, and that was enough. The weekend following the event, Eli and Anna spent the day at the park, their favorite spot. It had become a place where they could escape from the world, if only for a little while. The autumn leaves were falling, creating a beautiful tapestry of colors on the ground, and the cool air felt refreshing. Eli looked at Anna, who was sitting beside him, her legs crossed, and her eyes gazing up at the sky. "You know, I've been thinking," he began, his voice quiet. "About everything. About us. About the future." Anna turned to him, her expression soft and full of curiosity. "What about it?" she asked. "I don't want things to change," Eli said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Not with you. Not with everything we've built. I know it's been hard. I know there are still people who don't get it, but I don't care. I want to keep going. Together." Anna smiled, her eyes sparkling with warmth. "Eli, we've already made it this far. We've faced so much together, and we're still standing. Nothing can change that." Eli looked at her, feeling a surge of gratitude. "I don't think I could have done it without you," he said quietly. "You've made me stronger. You've helped me realize that I don't have to hide who I am. Not anymore." Anna placed her hand on his, her fingers gently squeezing his. "You've always been strong, Eli. You just needed to see it for yourself. And I'm here to remind you of that every day." The words she spoke filled him with a sense of peace. Anna had become more than just a friend. She had become his anchor, his support, the person who saw him for who he really was. They sat together in silence for a while, the only sounds being the rustling of the leaves and the distant chatter of other park-goers. Eli felt at home in that moment, in that space, with Anna by his side. But as the days turned into weeks, Eli began to notice a change in his father. While Marcus had been more accepting of Anna, there was still an underlying tension that he couldn't ignore. It wasn't as obvious as it had been before, but Eli could sense it. His father was still struggling to let go of the control he had always held over Eli's life. One evening, after dinner, Marcus called Eli into his study. Eli knew this conversation was coming. His father had been distant lately, and it was clear that something was bothering him. "Eli," Marcus began, his voice calm but filled with something unspoken. "We need to talk." Eli nodded, taking a seat across from his father. He had prepared himself for this. "What's on your mind?" Eli asked, trying to keep his tone neutral. Marcus sighed, looking at Eli with a mixture of concern and frustration. "I've been thinking a lot about you and Anna," he said slowly. "And while I've accepted that you two are friends, I'm still not sure about the long-term consequences. You're getting closer to her, and I don't want you to be blindsided by things you don't understand. The world she comes from isn't the same as ours." Eli's heart began to race. He knew this was coming, but it didn't make it any easier to hear. "Dad, I've told you before," Eli said, his voice firm. "Anna is my friend. She's not the problem. You are." Marcus raised an eyebrow, clearly taken aback. "What do you mean by that?" he asked, his voice sharp. "You've spent your whole life trying to control me," Eli said, his words coming out faster now. "You've always wanted me to be someone I'm not, someone I can't be. You've pushed me into a box that I don't fit in anymore. And now, you're doing the same thing with Anna. You don't want me to be friends with her because she's not from the same world. But she's the only one who's ever seen me for who I really am. The only one who hasn't treated me like a charity case or a project." Marcus's expression shifted, his eyes flickering with a mix of guilt and anger. "Eli, I'm just trying to protect you," he said quietly. "You don't know what the world is like out there. People like Anna, they're not the kind of people you should be around." Eli stood up, his heart pounding. "You don't get it, Dad. You think you're protecting me, but all you're doing is holding me back. You can't control everything. You can't decide who I'm allowed to be friends with." There was a long silence between them, the weight of their words hanging heavy in the room. Marcus finally spoke, his voice softer now, but still tinged with frustration. "I don't want to lose you, Eli. I just don't want you to get hurt. That's all." Eli felt a surge of emotion, but he didn't back down. "I'm not going to lose myself just because you're afraid," he said, his voice steady. "And I'm not going to lose Anna either. She's my friend, and that's all that matters." Marcus sat back in his chair, his hands folded in front of him. "I don't know if I'll ever fully understand this," he said quietly. "But I'll try. I'll try to let go." Eli took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of relief and sadness. He wasn't sure if his father would ever completely accept Anna, but at least for now, he wasn't standing in the way anymore. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but Eli knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to back down. With Anna by his side, he felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they could handle anything. The days that followed were marked by an odd quiet that lingered in the house. The tension between Eli and his father, Marcus, had not completely dissipated. Despite the progress they had made in their relationship, there were still moments where it felt as if Eli was walking on eggshells, unsure if his father truly accepted his friendship with Anna. But Eli wasn't going to let that deter him. He had already made the decision to live his life on his own terms. What mattered to him now was the bond he shared with Anna and the future they were building together. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. One afternoon, as Eli and Anna were walking through the park, they passed by a group of their classmates. Some of them still whispered behind their backs, while others cast judgmental glances. Eli felt his heart race as they walked past, but Anna's presence by his side made him feel stronger. It was clear that the world around them hadn't changed, but they had. "Don't let them get to you," Anna said, her voice steady and comforting as she noticed Eli's tense expression. "They can say whatever they want, but it doesn't matter. We know the truth." Eli looked at her, his heart swelling with gratitude. "I don't know how you do it," he said, his voice quiet. "You always seem so confident, so sure of everything." Anna smiled softly. I wasn't always like this, she admitted. But you've taught me a lot. You've shown me that it's okay to be who you are, even when others don't understand. Eli felt a lump form in his throat. Anna had always been there for him, supporting him when he needed it most. She had given him the courage to be himself, to stop pretending. And for that, he would be forever grateful. As they continued their walk, the weight of the world seemed to fall away. The park was peaceful, with families and children playing in the distance, but Eli felt like he was in a bubble with Anna, where nothing else mattered. They reached the far side of the park, where an old wooden bench sat beneath a large oak tree. Anna took a seat, patting the space beside her. "Come on, sit with me for a while," she said with a smile. Eli joined her, the two of them sitting in comfortable silence for a few moments, watching the world go by. "I've been thinking," Eli began after a while, his voice a little more serious. "About everything. About my dad. About the future." Anna turned to him, her expression soft and full of understanding. "What about it?" she asked. "I don't know," Eli said, rubbing his temples. "I feel like I'm stuck between two worlds. I want to be my own person, but at the same time, I don't want to disappoint my dad. He's been so distant lately, and it's like I can feel him pulling away." Anna nodded slowly. "I get it. It's hard when you feel like you're being torn between two things you care about. But you have to remember that you can't please everyone. You're never going to be able to make everyone happy, especially when it comes to your dad." Eli glanced over at her, his brow furrowing. "What do you mean?" Anna sighed, her gaze shifting to the ground. "Your dad loves you, Eli. I can see that. But he's also scared. He's scared of losing you. And he's scared of losing control. But that doesn't mean you have to follow every rule he sets for you." Eli took a deep breath. "I've been trying to make him happy, but it feels like no matter what I do, I'm never good enough. Like I'm always disappointing him." "That's not true," Anna said firmly, her eyes locking with his. "You're not disappointing him. You're growing, Eli. And growing means changing, and that's hard for some people to accept. But that doesn't mean you have to stop being who you are. Your dad will come around. He just needs time to realize that you're not the same little boy he used to know." Eli nodded, feeling a sense of calm wash over him. Anna was right. He had to stop trying to fit into a mold that wasn't his. He had to stop worrying about what his father thought and start focusing on what he wanted. And what he wanted was simple. He wanted to be himself. "You're right," Eli said, his voice steady. "I've been so caught up in trying to meet other people's expectations that I forgot what I wanted. I want to be happy, Anna. I want to be free to live my life on my own terms." Anna smiled, her eyes lighting up with warmth. "And you will be, Eli. You're already on your way. All you have to do now is trust yourself and trust that the people who care about you will support you." Eli smiled back, his heart feeling lighter than it had in days. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but with Anna by his side, he felt ready to face whatever came next. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking, laughing, and just being present with each other. Eli felt like he had finally found his place in the world, and it wasn't in the expectations of others. It was in the friendship he shared with Anna, the one person who truly understood him. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of pink and orange, Eli realized that he had everything he needed right there beside him. He didn't need anyone's approval to be happy. He just needed to be true to himself. And with Anna's unwavering support, he knew that he could take on anything the future had in store. The days after their heartfelt conversation were filled with a newfound clarity for Eli. He had finally made the decision to stop living in the shadow of his father's expectations. It wasn't an easy choice, and there were still moments of doubt, but with Anna's unwavering support, Eli felt like he was on the right path. His relationship with his father, while still strained, had begun to shift. Marcus wasn't fully on board, but there were small signs that he was starting to accept Eli's decisions. The real change, however, was happening inside Eli. He had found his voice. It wasn't just the friendship with Anna that was growing stronger, but his entire outlook on life. He no longer felt the need to pretend to be someone he wasn't. For the first time, Eli felt like he was living his truth. The following weekend, Marcus called Eli into his study. Eli's heart beat a little faster, unsure of what this conversation would bring. It had been a while since they had really talked, about anything. He knew that things had been changing, but he wasn't sure if they had reached a point of understanding yet. When he walked in, Marcus was sitting at his desk, looking over some papers, but he looked up as soon as Eli entered. "Eli," Marcus began, his voice measured. I've been thinking. About everything. Eli's stomach twisted slightly. What do you mean? About you. About Anna. About what you've been telling me. Marcus paused, choosing his words carefully. I know you don't want to hear this, but I've had time to think about it all, and I need to say something. Eli stood still, waiting for his father to continue. I know I've been hard on you, Marcus said, his voice softer now. I didn't understand. I didn't understand you or her, or why this was so important to you. I've been so caught up in my own way of doing things that I couldn't see past it. Eli's chest tightened, unsure of where this conversation was going. But I've realized something, Marcus continued, his eyes meeting Eli's. You're growing up. You're making your own choices. And I can't keep trying to control that. You're right. Anna, she's important to you. And that's enough for me to try to accept. Eli blinked, processing his father's words. He had never expected Marcus to say anything like this. The weight of his father's approval, even if it was reluctant, settled heavily on him. I'm still not sure about everything, Marcus added, his voice distant now. But I'm willing to try. For you. Eli's heart pounded in his chest. This wasn't the perfect resolution he had hoped for, but it was something. It was progress. Thanks, Dad, Eli said quietly, his voice filled with a mixture of relief and uncertainty. I know this isn't easy for you, but I'm glad you're trying. Marcus nodded, his gaze lingering on Eli for a moment longer before he turned back to the papers on his desk. We'll figure it out, he said, his voice returning to its usual calm. Eli left the room, feeling a strange mix of emotions. There was relief, yes, but also a sense of sadness. He had hoped for more, but at least his father was willing to meet him halfway. As he walked through the house, Eli couldn't help but think about everything that had happened. He had always known that his relationship with his father was complicated, but this moment, this small step forward, felt like a breakthrough. Maybe it wasn't all about winning his father's approval. Maybe it was about creating his own path and trusting that the people who truly mattered would understand. The next day, Eli met Anna at the park again. They sat together on the same bench, watching the sunset. Anna smiled at him, her eyes soft and knowing. How did it go? She asked. Eli took a deep breath, his mind still processing the conversation with Marcus. It went better than I expected, he said slowly. My dad's still struggling with it, but he's trying. And that's all I can ask for. Anna smiled, her hand finding his. That's all you need. As long as you know who you are, and you're true to yourself, that's what matters. Eli nodded, feeling the weight of her words. I think I'm starting to understand that. I'm not perfect. I'm still figuring things out. But I don't have to do it alone. Anna's smile grew wider, her eyes sparkling with pride. Exactly. You're never alone, Eli. And you've got a lot more people who love you than you realize. Eli felt a wave of warmth fill him as he looked at her. She was right. He had Anna, and he had made progress with his father. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel so alone in the world. I'm really lucky to have you, Eli said softly, his voice filled with gratitude. Anna's grip on his hand tightened. You don't have to be lucky, Eli. You deserve this. You deserve happiness, and you deserve to be who you are, no matter what anyone says. Eli smiled at her, feeling like everything was starting to come together. It wasn't perfect, and there were still challenges ahead, but for the first time in his life, he felt like he was on the right path. And with Anna by his side, he knew he could face anything. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting the park in a warm glow. Eli looked at Anna, his heart full. The future was uncertain, but with her by his side, he was ready to face whatever came next. The weeks after their conversation with Marcus felt like a slow, steady shift for Eli. He knew it wasn't over, that the challenges were still there, but the weight of his father's acceptance, even if incomplete, had lightened the load he carried. There was a new quiet strength in Eli, a confidence that had been missing before, and with Anna by his side, it felt like they could take on the world. As the days passed, they began to settle into a new routine. It wasn't flawless, but it was theirs. They still faced challenges from people who couldn't understand their friendship, but the pressure didn't feel as heavy anymore. They were a team, and nothing could break their bond. But things were far from perfect. One day, out of nowhere, Eli received a call that made his heart skip a beat. It was from his father's office. He answered quickly, his mind already racing with possibilities. Eli, the voice on the other end said, Your father wants to speak with you. He's having some serious problems at work. You might need to come in. Eli's stomach dropped. He hadn't expected anything like this, especially after everything had seemed to settle down. He glanced at Anna, who was sitting beside him on the couch. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice full of concern. "It's my dad," Eli said, his voice uncertain. "He needs me to come in. Something's happened at work." Anna stood up, walking over to him, her hand finding his. "Do you want me to come with you?" she asked, her eyes filled with worry. Eli hesitated. "I don't know. It might be one of those things that I have to handle on my own." But the thought of facing whatever was happening without her by his side felt impossible. He knew he wasn't alone anymore, not with Anna there. "Actually, yeah," he said, his voice steadier now. "I want you to come." They made their way to the office, the familiar weight of the unknown hanging in the air. When they arrived, Marcus was pacing in his office, his face drawn with stress. He stopped when he saw Eli and Anna standing in the doorway, his expression softening just slightly. "Eli," Marcus said, his voice low, "I didn't want to pull you into this, but it's getting out of hand." "What's going on?" Eli asked, stepping closer. Marcus motioned for them to sit down. "I've been dealing with some business issues. People I trusted have been making moves that could ruin everything I've worked for. It's complicated." Eli sat down, trying to process the weight of his father's words. Anna sat beside him, her presence a steady comfort. "What do you need from me?" Eli asked, his voice calm but filled with concern. Marcus looked at him for a long moment, his face tired but resolute. "I need you to understand, Eli, this isn't just about business anymore. It's about keeping our family safe. The people I'm dealing with, they don't play fair. They'll go after anything they can to hurt me, and that includes you. Your reputation, your future. Everything I've worked for could come crashing down if we don't handle this carefully." Eli felt a knot form in his stomach. "What do you want me to do?" he asked, his voice steady, even though his mind was racing. Marcus paused, his gaze drifting to Anna before he spoke again. "I need you to stay out of the spotlight, Eli. Keep your head down, avoid unnecessary attention. Stay away from public events. Keep your distance from people who don't understand the situation." Anna squeezed Eli's hand, but Eli could feel the weight of his father's words. He wasn't sure what to make of it. "So you're asking me to hide?" Eli asked, his voice hard. "You're telling me to stay quiet and pretend like everything's fine when it's not?" Marcus didn't respond immediately, his expression filled with regret. "I'm asking you to protect yourself, Eli," he said softly. "I don't want anything to happen to you." Eli felt his frustration rise. "This isn't just about me, is it, Dad? This is about you, about protecting your empire. You're asking me to play along with your game, to hide, to pretend like nothing's happening." Marcus's eyes flashed with anger. "It's not like that," he said sharply. "I'm trying to keep you safe. You think I don't care about you? This is bigger than us." Eli stood up, his heart racing with frustration. "No, it's not bigger than us, Dad. You've been treating me like I'm some pawn in your game for so long. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not hiding for you. I'm not hiding for anyone." Anna stood beside him, her eyes filled with understanding. "Eli's right," she said softly. "He's his own person. You can't keep asking him to put everything aside for you. He's already given up enough." There was silence in the room. Marcus looked between Eli and Anna, his face softening. "I just want to protect you both," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. Eli's anger faded, replaced by a sense of sadness. "I know, Dad. I know you do. But you have to stop treating me like I'm just a part of your plan. I'm not your business, and I'm not going to live in your world if it means sacrificing everything that matters to me." Marcus looked away, his expression unreadable. For a moment, it felt like Eli had lost everything. But then Anna stepped forward, placing a hand on his arm. "We'll face this together," she said, her voice steady. "No matter what comes, we'll figure it out." Eli looked at her, his heart swelling with gratitude. For the first time, he realized that no matter what obstacles they faced, no matter what came next, he wasn't alone. And that, for him, was everything. They left the office that evening, the weight of the conversation still heavy between them. But Eli felt a sense of resolve, knowing that whatever happened, he would always have Anna by his side. And that made him feel stronger than anything else. The days that followed their conversation with Marcus were filled with uncertainty. Eli couldn't shake the weight of his father's words. The pressure to stay out of the spotlight, to play it safe, to hide, it all felt like a tightening noose around his neck. He didn't know how much longer he could keep pretending that everything was fine when it wasn't. The world Marcus had built for him, this world of power, control, and expectations, was one that Eli had no interest in living in anymore. But there was still his father, still the old world Eli couldn't escape. He didn't want to disappoint Marcus, but he also didn't want to lose himself. The constant tension made everything feel like a delicate balance. One wrong move, and it all might come crashing down. Anna noticed the change in Eli. He had become more withdrawn, more distant. He still smiled, still laughed, but it wasn't the same. He was holding something back, and she could see it in his eyes. One evening, as they sat in the quiet of the park, Anna turned to him. "Eli," she said softly, "what's really going on? You've been different lately." Eli looked at her, his heart heavy with emotions he couldn't fully articulate. He wanted to open up, to tell her everything, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he just stared at the ground, taking deep breaths as if trying to push down the overwhelming feelings. Anna placed a hand on his, her touch gentle yet firm, like she was grounding him. "You don't have to say anything if you're not ready," she said quietly. "But you don't have to carry this alone. I'm here." The sincerity in her voice broke through the walls he had built around himself. Slowly, Eli looked up at her, his eyes filled with vulnerability. "It's my dad," he said, his voice tight. "He wants me to stay out of the public eye. He doesn't want me to do anything that could put our family in jeopardy. I'm supposed to hide, to pretend everything's fine, and I can't do it anymore." Anna's heart ached for him. She could see the conflict inside him, the tug-of-war between wanting to live his life freely and the pressure to meet his father's expectations. She squeezed his hand gently. "You don't have to choose between your happiness and your family, Eli. You're not alone in this. I'm here, and we'll figure it out together, okay?" Eli nodded, the words she spoke soothing him more than he expected. He didn't realize how much he needed her reassurance until that moment. It felt like the weight he had been carrying was finally being lifted, just a little. But the reality of their situation wasn't something that could be ignored. His father had made his position clear: stay out of the public eye, avoid the attention, keep a low profile. But what did that mean for Eli? How much longer could he keep living a life that wasn't his? It felt like his father's vision for his future was closing in on him, suffocating him, while his own path seemed to be slipping farther out of reach. The following week, Eli made the decision to confront his father once again. He had to do it. He couldn't keep living in a world of half-truths and unspoken tension. He needed to stand up for himself, for his future, and for the person he had become with Anna by his side. That evening, after dinner, Eli walked into Marcus's study. The room was dimly lit, and Marcus was seated at his desk, papers scattered around him. He looked up when Eli entered, his expression unreadable. "Eli," Marcus said, his tone cautious, "we need to talk." Eli stood tall, feeling a surge of determination rise within him. "I can't keep doing this, Dad," he said, his voice steady. "I can't keep living in your world, playing by your rules, pretending everything's fine when it's not." Marcus's brow furrowed. "What do you mean by that?" he asked, his voice tightening. "I mean I'm done hiding," Eli said, his voice growing stronger. "I've spent so much time trying to meet your expectations, but it's not who I am. I'm not your business project. I'm not some perfect son who fits into your world. I'm me, and I want to live my life on my own terms." Marcus's face darkened, a flicker of frustration crossing his features. "This isn't just about you, Eli," he said. "This is about the family, about everything I've worked for. You're asking me to risk it all for your friendship with Anna." Eli's heart pounded, but he didn't back down. "I'm not asking you to risk anything," he said. "I'm asking you to trust me. Anna is my friend. She's been there for me when no one else has. She sees me for who I really am, not the image you want me to be." Marcus looked at him for a long moment, his eyes filled with conflicting emotions. "I don't know how to do that," he said quietly. "I don't know how to trust you, Eli. You're asking me to let go of everything I've spent my whole life building." Eli's voice softened. "I know it's hard, Dad, but I'm not asking you to let go of everything. I'm just asking you to let me be who I am. I'm not you. I don't want to live in your world anymore. I want to live in mine." There was a long pause. Eli could see the struggle in his father's eyes. For the first time, he didn't feel like he was fighting an invisible enemy. He felt like he was finally speaking his truth. Marcus sighed, the weight of the conversation settling between them. "I don't know what that looks like, Eli. I don't know how to let go." Eli's heart clenched. You don't have to let go completely. Just let me live. Let me make my own choices. Let me live my own life. Marcus looked at him for a long moment before nodding slowly. I can't promise everything will be easy, he said quietly. But I'll try. I'll try to understand. Eli felt a wave of relief wash over him. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. He wasn't asking for his father's approval. He was asking for his freedom. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like he was finally being heard. As Eli left the study, he felt lighter. The battle wasn't over, but he knew one thing for sure. He would no longer live for anyone else's expectations. He would live for himself. And with Anna by his side, he knew that together, they could face whatever came next. As the days passed, the sense of unease that had hung over Eli began to settle. The conversation with his father had left him with a sense of cautious hope. Marcus had made progress, and Eli could feel that. While they weren't there yet, they were finally starting to understand each other. Yet, even with that breakthrough, there were still moments where the world felt heavy. The whispers at school hadn't stopped. People continued to judge Eli and Anna, unsure of the boundaries of their friendship, questioning what it meant for both of them. But there was a calmness that Eli now carried with him, a quiet strength. It wasn't the kind of strength that came from loud defiance. It was a calm resolve, a quiet rebellion against the norms of the world around him. As Eli spent more time with Anna, the weight of the world seemed to lift, if only for a few moments. They would walk together, talk for hours, or simply sit in silence, watching the sun set over the city. Anna had become his constant, the one person who truly understood him. One afternoon, as they sat in the park, Anna turned to him, her expression thoughtful. Eli, she began, her voice soft. Do you ever think about what the future holds? Eli looked at her, a hint of surprise in his eyes. I don't know. I mean, sometimes, yeah. It's hard to picture what comes next, especially when everything still feels uncertain. Anna smiled gently, her eyes reflecting a mix of understanding and determination. The future is always uncertain, but I think we're on the right path. You've already made the hardest decision. You're not trying to fit into a mold anymore. You're living your truth. Eli exhaled slowly, his gaze drifting to the horizon. It's just hard, you know? I've spent so long trying to make everyone happy, trying to do what's expected of me. And now that I've finally decided to stand up for myself, to live for myself, it feels like, I don't know, it feels like I'm letting go of everything. Anna's expression softened, and she placed her hand gently on his. Letting go isn't the same as losing, she said quietly. You're not losing anything. You're gaining yourself. Eli's heart swelled with her words. She had always known how to put things into perspective, how to calm the storm inside him. He smiled, grateful for her presence, for her unwavering support. I don't know what I'd do without you, Anna, he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. You've been the one constant in my life, the one person who's been there through everything. Anna smiled, squeezing his hand. I'm always going to be here, Eli. No matter what happens, we'll face it together. The promise felt like an anchor, grounding him in a world that often felt unpredictable and overwhelming. As much as Eli had been afraid of the unknown, he realized that with Anna by his side, he could face anything. The next day, Eli's world shifted again. It started with a call from his father. It was early in the morning, and Eli had been getting ready for school when the phone rang. His heart skipped a beat when he saw Marcus's name on the screen. Eli, Marcus's voice came through the phone, sounding tired but purposeful. I need you to come to the office today. We have to talk. Eli's stomach tightened. He hadn't expected another conversation with his father so soon after their last one. But he knew this wasn't something he could avoid. Sure, Dad, Eli said, his voice steady. I'll be there in an hour. Anna had been sitting beside him as he received the call, and she immediately noticed the tension in his posture. What's going on? She asked, concern in her voice. Eli sighed, running a hand through his hair. It's my dad. He wants to talk. I'm not sure what about. Anna's brow furrowed. Do you want me to come with you? She asked, her voice soft. Eli shook his head. I think this is something I need to do on my own. Anna nodded, understanding his need for space but still offering her support. You know I'm here for you, right? No matter what happens. Eli gave her a small smile, grateful for her presence. I know. Thanks, Anna. He left the house with a mixture of uncertainty and resolve, wondering what his father had to say. When he arrived at the office, Marcus was waiting for him, pacing back and forth. The tension in the air was palpable. As Eli entered, Marcus stopped and looked at him with a mixture of apprehension and purpose. "Eli, I've been thinking a lot about what we talked about last time," Marcus said, his voice steady but tinged with something Eli couldn't quite place. "I've realized that I've been holding on too tightly. I've been trying to protect you from the world I've built, but it's not fair to you. You're right. You have to live your own life." Eli stood in the doorway, taking in his father's words. It was more than he had expected, more than he thought Marcus was capable of. "I want to apologize," Marcus continued, his voice softening. "I've been so focused on what I thought was best for you that I couldn't see the bigger picture. I couldn't see that you needed something different. I'm still not sure how to let go, but I'll try. For you." Eli's heart raced as he processed his father's apology. It wasn't everything he had hoped for, but it was a start. "Thanks, Dad," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I know it's not easy, but it means a lot that you're trying." Marcus nodded, looking at him with a mixture of pride and regret. "I just want you to be happy, Eli. I don't want you to feel like you have to live in my shadow." Eli felt the weight of his father's words, and for the first time, he realized that their relationship had shifted. It wasn't perfect, but it was moving forward. Later that day, as Eli met Anna in the park, he felt a sense of relief wash over him. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. He was no longer afraid of what was to come. With Anna by his side, he knew that together, they could face anything. After their conversation with Marcus, Eli felt an odd sense of relief. For the first time in a long time, he felt like the distance between him and his father had started to shrink. The words his father had said were not perfect, but they were enough to let Eli know that things could improve, that their relationship was not beyond repair. It wasn't an overnight transformation, but it was progress, and Eli held on to that. With Anna's support, Eli began to breathe easier. They spent more time together, finding new ways to enjoy each other's company without the weight of the world hanging over them. The pressure from his father, while still present, had lessened. Marcus had started to back off, giving Eli more space to figure out who he was outside of the world he had grown up in. Despite all of this, Eli still couldn't shake the unease that lingered in the back of his mind. He couldn't stop thinking about the future. What would it look like? How could he continue to move forward when there were still so many unknowns? As much as Anna reassured him, there were still moments when Eli felt like he was standing on the edge of something, unsure whether to leap or hold back. One afternoon, Eli and Anna sat on their favorite bench in the park. The sun was starting to dip below the horizon, casting a golden glow across the sky. Anna had always found peace in moments like these, and Eli had come to appreciate them too. "Do you ever think about what's next?" Anna asked quietly, breaking the comfortable silence between them. Eli took a deep breath, the question catching him off guard. "I try not to," he admitted. "But I can't help it. I mean, it feels like things are finally starting to fall into place, but at the same time, it feels like everything is still so uncertain. I don't know what's coming next." Anna nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I think that's the thing about life, Eli," she said softly. "It's never fully certain. You can't control everything. All we can do is take it one step at a time. And right now, all that matters is that we're here." Eli looked at her, a smile tugging at his lips. "Yeah, I guess you're right," he said, feeling a wave of calm wash over him. Anna was always the steadying force in his life, the one person who could make him feel grounded when everything else seemed so overwhelming. "What about you, Anna?" he asked, turning the question back on her. "What do you see for your future?" Anna hesitated, a slight frown crossing her face. "I don't really know either," she said slowly. "I've never really thought about the future in the way you do. I've always focused on getting through the day, surviving, you know? But now, with you, I don't feel like I have to be afraid of what's ahead. I feel like we can face whatever comes next together." Eli felt a rush of emotion as he listened to her words. He had never realized just how much Anna had been carrying on her own. She had always seemed so strong, so confident, but now he saw the vulnerability she had kept hidden. "We will face it together," Eli said, his voice steady. "No matter what happens, I won't let you go. We'll figure it out, together." Anna smiled, her eyes lighting up with warmth. "I know we will," she said softly, her hand gently resting on his. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was a peaceful kind of quiet, one where words weren't necessary. Eli didn't know what the future held, But for the first time, he didn't feel so afraid of it. With Anna beside him, he felt like they could face anything. Later that night, as Eli lay in bed, his thoughts turned to his father. Despite the progress they had made, Eli couldn't ignore the feeling that something still needed to change. Marcus had promised to try, but Eli knew that there was more to be done. He needed to make sure his father understood that he was no longer a child, no longer someone who could be controlled. The following morning, Eli decided to take matters into his own hands. He couldn't wait any longer. He couldn't keep living in this limbo. As soon as Marcus returned from work, Eli confronted him. The conversation was difficult, filled with hesitation and raw emotion. But in the end, Eli was clear about one thing. He wasn't going to hide anymore. He wasn't going to live according to someone else's expectations. Marcus listened, really listened, for the first time in what felt like forever. It wasn't easy for either of them, but by the end of the conversation, there was a tentative understanding between father and son. Eli wasn't asking for total acceptance. He was asking for space to be himself, to live on his own terms. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was the first step toward a future where Eli could finally live his truth. As the days passed, Eli found himself feeling lighter. The tension with Marcus hadn't fully disappeared, but it had shifted. There was still work to be done, but for the first time in a long time, Eli felt like he was moving in the right direction. He didn't need his father's approval to be happy. He had Anna, and that was enough. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The road wouldn't be easy, but they were ready for it. With each step, Eli felt more certain about his future. The future he was creating, on his own terms, with Anna by his side. As the days continued to pass, Eli began to feel like he was entering a new phase in his life. The conversation with his father, while not perfect, had given him a new sense of freedom. There was still a long way to go, but Eli no longer felt trapped by the weight of his father's expectations. He knew he had the space to make his own choices, and that realization was empowering. He wasn't living for someone else anymore. He was living for himself. The connection with Anna had only deepened in the weeks since that conversation. She had become his rock, the one person he could rely on to keep him grounded when the world around him felt uncertain. Together, they navigated the complexities of their lives, supporting each other when things got tough. But even with all the progress they had made, Eli couldn't escape the nagging feeling that there was something more they had to confront. He had always known that his world, the world of wealth and privilege, came with its own set of challenges. But now, he was beginning to see how much that world had shaped him, for better or for worse. One afternoon, as Eli and Anna walked through the park, he couldn't help but notice the whispers that still followed them. People still stared, still judged, and even though he tried to ignore it, the discomfort lingered. "Do you ever think this will get any easier?" Eli asked, his voice low. Anna, walking beside him, glanced up at him, her face calm. "I think it's getting easier for us," she said softly. "What other people think doesn't really matter, Eli. The only thing that matters is what we have, what we choose." Eli nodded, but the unease didn't disappear. It was clear that while they had made strides in their relationship and their understanding of each other, there was still a battle they had to face. A battle with the world around them. They continued their walk, the quiet of the park offering a brief respite from the chaos outside. But even in the peace of the park, Eli couldn't shake the thought that he was living in two different worlds, his father's world and his own. The tension between the two was starting to feel unbearable. "I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending," Eli admitted quietly, glancing at Anna. "I don't want to let my dad down, but I also don't want to keep living like this. I want to be free, to be who I am, not who I'm expected to be." Anna stopped walking, turning to face him. "Eli, you're already doing it," she said, her voice steady. "You're not pretending anymore. You're living your truth. And that's all that matters." Eli took a deep breath, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. She was right. He didn't have to keep living a life dictated by someone else's rules. He had already taken the most important step. He had chosen himself, chosen to live authentically, regardless of the pressure from his father or society. The journey wasn't easy, but it was his to take. "I just don't know what comes next," Eli confessed, his voice full of uncertainty. "How do I keep going when I feel like I'm constantly fighting something I can't change?" Anna smiled at him, her hand finding his. "You keep going by taking it one step at a time. You don't have to have everything figured out right now. You just have to keep moving forward, and I'll be here every step of the way. The comfort of her words settled over him like a blanket, and for the first time in a long while, Eli allowed himself to feel at peace. He wasn't alone. He had Anna by his side, and together, they could face whatever challenges came their way. Over the next few days, Eli felt a shift within himself. The uncertainty that had plagued him seemed to lessen with each passing moment. He wasn't running from the challenges anymore. He was facing them head-on, with Anna by his side, and that made all the difference. He knew there was still work to be done, still progress to be made with his father, still battles to fight with the outside world, but he no longer feared what lay ahead. He had something more important now, the confidence to live his own life, to be who he truly was. And that was enough. As he stood on the edge of a new chapter, Eli finally realized that the world didn't have to make sense. It didn't have to fit into the mold his father had built for him. What mattered was the journey he had already begun, the one he was choosing for himself, with Anna at his side. And in that moment, Eli knew that no matter what came next, he was ready. Together, they would face the future, step by step, with the strength of their bond carrying them through. The weeks that followed felt like a slow unraveling of everything Eli had once known. But it wasn't the kind of unraveling that brought destruction. It was the kind that brought growth, clarity, and new beginnings. He had made peace with his father, even if it wasn't perfect. They were in a new place. And although they still had their struggles, the communication between them had opened up. There was still tension, still a gap between what Marcus expected and what Eli needed, but there was progress, and Eli held on to that. It wasn't about reaching some perfect resolution. It was about the journey. He no longer felt like he was fighting against the world. He wasn't just moving forward. He was walking toward his own truth. The final piece of the puzzle, though, was learning to trust himself. He didn't need to answer to anyone but himself. And with Anna by his side, he knew he was ready to take on whatever came next. One day, while walking together in the park, Anna turned to Eli with a serious look in her eyes. "Have you ever thought about what happens when we leave this place?" she asked, her voice calm but tinged with curiosity. Eli paused, considering the question. He had always been so focused on getting through the moment, on surviving the expectations of his father, on navigating the world he had been given, that he hadn't really allowed himself to think about the future. "I don't know," he said, looking at the trees overhead, the sunlight filtering through the leaves. "I guess I've been so caught up in everything going on around me that I never really thought about what comes next. I'm still figuring out who I am, but I think I'm starting to see where I want to go." Anna smiled, her expression soft with understanding. "You're not alone in figuring it out," she said, her voice steady. "And whatever happens, I know we'll figure it out together." The words hung in the air between them, and Eli could feel the weight of them. Anna had always been his steadying force, the person who had given him the courage to be himself when the world seemed to want to tell him who to be. He realized that with her by his side, there was nothing he couldn't face. No matter what was to come, they would face it together. The next few months brought more change. Marcus, while still struggling with the reality of Eli's independence, had taken more steps to support him. He started to show up at Eli's events, showing that he was trying to respect his son's boundaries. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough for Eli to feel like they were building something new. It wasn't the kind of father-son relationship he had imagined, but it was real, and it was his. Anna, too, continued to be a constant. The challenges they faced together were never easy, but the way they stood side by side through everything made it clear that they were a team, stronger together than apart. Their bond had become unshakable, and they both knew that nothing could change the way they felt about each other. Life continued to unfold, and Eli was beginning to realize that the world outside could be unpredictable and even harsh, but that didn't matter. He had found his place in it. He had chosen his path, and now he was walking it with confidence. His future was his to create. With Anna, there was no fear anymore, just a sense of possibility. The last thing Eli needed was approval from anyone else. He didn't need his father's acceptance to feel complete. He didn't need the world's approval to feel valuable. He had Anna, and that was enough. Their lives were intertwined in a way that made them both stronger. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, Eli saw the pieces of his life falling into place. He knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth. There would be challenges, moments of doubt, and times when he would question himself. But now, with his own truth as his foundation, he knew he could face whatever came next. Anna had given him the courage to take the first step, and now he was walking confidently into his future, step by step. And as long as they had each other, nothing could stop them. Together, they had created a world that was real, a world where they could both be exactly who they were meant to be. And in the end, that was all that mattered.